Next up, we'll kind of switch gears into fish and fishery regulations, and we have Petty Officer Russell Post, who is joining us from the Sault Ste. Marie Coast Guard to tell us a little bit more about commercial fishing vessel safety and inspections. So welcome, Russell. Can you show your video? We're working on the back end here.
So I'm Marine Science Technician First Class Russell Post out of Sector Sault Ste. Marie. I'm one of the assistant marine inspectors for commercial fishing vessel safety. And we're going to go ahead and just go over some of the applicability and things that we'll inspect on our dockside exams. So hopefully we have some attendees that are the commercial fishing vessel fleet captains or vessel owners. All right, so again, we're going to go over the applicability and what does apply to you. Some self-check opportunities that you have that you can go over through a website that's available to anybody. How to request a Coast Guard exam, and then at the end, we'll do any questions and a point of contact for our main marine inspector for commercial fishing. So the casualty data shows that a high number of fishing vessel losses are a result of contributing conditions such as human factors, equipment failure, and poor system maintenance. More frequent examinations of firefighting, life-saving, and other safety systems can drastically reduce that risk. And the data you're seeing on that graph is from the National Census of Fatal Occupation Injuries. That's from 2019. So obviously it's our goal to obviously achieve a significant reduction. If you guys can click that next, I'll just read it verbatim for you. So we're trying to achieve a significant reduction in commercial fishing vessel fatalities, vessel losses, and damage to the environment through the outreach efforts, training, dockside examinations, and at-sea boardings that you may incur while out fishing. And the image that you see there is the examination sticker you'll receive after a successful examination by the Coast Guard. The applicability comes from U.S. Code and then several Code of Federal Regulations. So commercial fishing vessels that operate beyond a 3 mile from the shore point at any time, not just when fishing. So if you're transiting zones from one area to another, if you want to go cross lake, as soon as you cross that 3 mile threshold and you can be boarded by an at-sea Coast Guard unit, you are required to have a mandatory exam. So this includes, again, the transiting to or from fishing grounds and actively fishing. So vessels that operate within 3 miles are encouraged to request a voluntary dockside exam. So the website I was talking about earlier is fishsafewest.info. So this will provide you with a Coast Guard checklist generator that allows you to create a checklist that will tell you exactly what is required for your specific vessel and operations. This is an extremely helpful tool to conduct a pre-check of your vessel before requesting the Coast Guard to come out and conduct an exam. So it'll better prepare you so that when we come out and we go through our checklist, you'll have everything that's required, because we're going to look in our database and see what your vessel is. And we're just going to go down our checklist, and everything that you have from that checklist that you can develop yourself through that website will really expedite things. If we go to the next, you'll see a sample of the details entered into the generator. So I think we used a 30-foot vessel with 3 persons on board operating within 12 miles of the Great Lakes. And then after you put in all your preferences and what your data is, you'll get a actual 2-page checklist generated. So the items are broken down into categories. So documents, placards, plans, bridge and navigation equipment, life-saving, firefighting, engine room, and other areas. So, I mean, it's pretty foolproof in the sense that once you put in your vessel specifications and how many persons are operating on board and where you're actually operating, it will give you exactly what is required from the regulations that we're verifying at our dockside and at sea boardings. And then your safety gear inspections. So from that checklist, you can begin to conduct a self pre-check of everything that's required on your vessel. So you can either go out and purchase the items that are required to be on board, or you can actually just go ahead and do the safety gear inspections of the things that you already have. So the next couple slides are the majority of the requirements and what we're looking for. So flotation devices are obviously huge and very important to have on board. So basically, if you're on Lake Superior, you need to have an immersion suit for every person on board. So if you have 3 persons on board, you need to have 3. If you normally operate with 3, but you're carrying 4, you need to have that 4th one with you. All the other lakes and less than 40 feet, which is probably the majority of the fishing fleet throughout the Great Lakes, can have a Type 1, Type 2, Type 3, or Type 5 hybrid, or they can actually have an immersion suit in lieu of any of those. Obviously, some of the examples of the PFDs and immersion suits, general maintenance of them. Obviously, if you see broken stitches or tears in the fabric, maybe the buckle clip might break. I mean, obviously, you're here in the Great Lakes in the northern regions. Things get cold and plastic doesn't hold up too well. So if you see stuff like that, then obviously look forward to getting a replacement. That's something that we will require if we come out for your dockside. If it's not in operable condition, it will have to be replaced. Same thing with the zippers. The retro tape might be peeling, or if it's severely faded, obviously it has to have that high vis orange. So if it's sun faded and that's not covered well, again, things are going to cause you to have to replace that. So immersion suits, obviously there's several names for them: Gumby suits, immersion suits, survival suit. They use that thin layer of water to actually, it warms or uses your body heat to warm you and keep you, I don't want to say alive, but it will keep you alive longer than if you weren't wearing it, if you were to capsize and go into the water. So these have to be a Coast Guard approved, and if maintained, will last a very long time. They're a little cumbersome to don or put on, and we suggest practicing with them beforehand so you know how fast you can put them on in an emergency. You don't want to figure out that you can't do it in a certain amount of time if your vessel does start to take on water and start sinking, or something happens that you don't have that time available. Good thing to keep with these is like Walmart plastic bags or like small trash bags, so you can slip them over your boots. I know a lot of people are using rubber boots, and they can get caught up when you're trying to put your feet inside of the immersion suit. So if you slip those plastic bags over your boots when you're donning it, they'll just slide right in. And again, the examination for the immersion suits, you definitely want to make sure your zippers are working properly. You can actually get the maintenance wax, so it'll keep them sliding. The buoyancy collar or the auto inflate, you want to make sure that that's working, so all your valves are in correct alignment. Check for any holes or rips or tears. Again, stitching is a big thing. Any of the retroreflective tape. Make sure the proper size is available for the people that are going to be on your vessel. That's huge. I mean, you don't want something that's extremely large for a smaller person, or obviously small for a large person. And make sure that they're stowed in a readily accessible area, so that when there is an emergency, they can be grabbed quickly. So the PFD lights, or anything that has to be attached, obviously you can find the regulation in 46 CFR 25.25 TAC 13. You are required to have them, and they have to be a Coast Guard approved light. So check the batteries in them, make sure that the expiration dates, if there are any, are not exceeded. If it's more than 12 months, go ahead and just replace them out. That's the batteries, not the actual light itself. Lithium batteries can be installed for up to like 5 years. So your throwable flotation devices. The majority of the fishing fleet is going to be that 16 foot to less than 26 feet, and then the 26 to 65. I haven't seen too many larger vessels operating on the Great Lakes. They're usually more your ocean going. So make sure that you have that one Coast Guard approved throwable cushion or a ring life buoy if you're in that 16 to 26 foot range. The 26 to 65, make sure you have one orange 24-inch ring buoy with 60 feet of line attached. Again, make sure they're in good condition, no rips, tears. Make sure your line's not dry rotted, so if you start having to hoist somebody in, then it's not going to break. So survival crafts, this is probably one of the heavier lift items for the commercial fishing fleet because of their expense. There are alternatives. You can definitely review the chart and find out what is going to be applicable to you. Determining the warm and cold water areas. So through that info website, you can go through and it'll tell you month by month which Great Lake is considered to be, warm water, cold water, depending on the month. So a lot of that has play in the regulations. And again, that's something, if you have a more in-depth question as to your operating area, feel free to reach out to us, and the contact will be at the end of the slideshow. Distress signals, again, more than 3 miles is what we're in, and then obviously less than 3 miles has a little bit less requirements. So the number after the names are approval numbers, which refer to the CFR site that details the manufacturer standards. And again, if you don't have familiarity with the Code of Federal Regulations, we are more than happy to help you, or your district rep or your Coast Guard rep in your area. Two things to take note, obviously, is the ocean, the highlighted areas. So the ocean is 3 to 50 miles from the coastline, or more than 3 miles from the coastline of any Great Lake. So you're required to have the 3 parachute flares, 6 hand flares, and 3 smoke signals. Anything within 3 miles of the coastline of the Great Lakes, again, for night ops, you have to have the 1 SOS electric light, and then your 1 flag for daytime operation. Always check the expiration date of your flares. They can be kept, but they should be stored separately and clearly marked. Not saying you have to dispose of them. It's better to have something that's expired at your disposal, but make sure you do have flares on board that are not expired. We're not going to tell you just go ahead and throw them away. Again, if you need to exhaust all of your efforts to try to seek rescue, better to have the expired ones on board and give them a shot than not to have them at all. So EPIRBs, this includes the 3 miles from the shore of the Great Lakes, must be tested when it is installed and at least once a month. The master of the ship is responsible for ensuring that the EPIRB is tested. And again, you have the requirements for vessel length, so it's 36 feet or more in length. It gives you your frequencies that are required to be on board. Navigation lights, obviously check those before you go out, especially if you're doing night ops. So if you're engaged in fishing or other than trawling, you're going to have your day signals and your night lights. So red over white fishing at night. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that rhyme. I'm hoping you have. That's kind of ingrained with us as coasties. Fire extinguishers. There's a new naming specifications for the fire extinguisher. So what previously was B1, B2, B5. Now if you get a new fire extinguisher, you're going to see 5 TAC B, 10 TAC B, 20 TAC B. It's the same components and composition of the materials used inside of the fire extinguishers. They're just named differently. Outboard boats less than 26 feet are not required to carry fire extinguishers if their construction will not permit the entrapment of explosive gases or vapors. So depending on how your vessel is arranged, you may not need to have a fire extinguisher. We're always going to err on the side of caution and kind of encourage you to have one on board just in case. Again, same thing with everything else. Check your expiration dates and conduct your general maintenance of them. Typically, vessel owners or crew conduct required annual maintenance on the white aluminum canisters, which you can pretty much buy from your local marine store or Walmart or whatever's available to you. They're the ones with the plastic handles. They must be replaced when they're 12 years old. Everything else is going to have serviceability through a certified technician. So your red or yellow steel canisters, they're going to have to be, you're going to have to reach out to your local agency or certified inspectors to come out and re-tag them, maybe repressurize them, depending on what the calls may be for that. So gas engine fire prevention. Gas engines, except outboard motors, are required to have backfire flame control. Certain spaces are required to have means for removal of flammable gases. So like you're making sure you have adequate ventilation in your engine room space. Again, I don't see too many that actually have a designated engine room space versus a compartment, but they still have to have that easy flow of ventilation. And that'll kind of go into the next slide. So ensure that there's adequate exchange of air to lower the possibility of an explosion in your engine compartment. So if you have a designated engine room space, your vessel should have been constructed within certain specifications to allow that ingress of air, and then obviously the exhaust of any flammable vapors. So vessel registration, you should have a state numbering system depending on what state you are registering your fishing vessel in, as well as having certified Coast Guard documentation for your commercial fishing vessel measuring 5 net tons and greater. So there's a lot of confusion in this one. I don't want to get into the weeds of it, but a lot of the vessels were constructed in a way that they might not actually know what their tonnage is. If you do have a question of that, you're going to have to seek your assistance from your local shipyard, and they can actually do the calculations with you or for you. And again, other things that you're going to have on your documentation, what's the display name of the vessel, so whatever her name is, the hailing port, and then you're going to be issued a official number for us. It's going to be maintained in our database for identification purposes. So for injury placards, you can purchase a hard placard, you can make a sticker, you can print your own and kind of laminate it to a bulkhead with the words that are found above. And that's pretty much straight out of the 46 CFR 28.165 site. Again, if you have any questions about that placard, feel free to reach out to your local Coast Guard representative and we can point you in the right direction. Oil pollution placard, obviously we want to maintain environmental control of any pollutants in the Great Lakes. It's a very pristine waterway zone up here, and we want to make sure that that's obviously preserved. So make sure that that is placarded somewhere. Bulkhead, usually if you have an overboard discharge for oil on the internal space, not the external, make sure it's on there next to a valve that could potentially lead to an overboard discharge. Again, 26 feet or more, that's your requirement to have it. And again, the local Coast Guard unit might have these in stock as a sticker. If not, you can obviously have one made or purchase one online from another vendor. Garbage placards, if you are a 40-foot or larger vessel, you also have to have a waste management plan. It can be pretty simple. You can type it up yourself or written documentation that describes your plan to collect, process, store, remove any garbage, and it designates a person or position in charge of carrying out the plan. So if you're one or two persons on board, usually the master takes care of that. And it can be simple as something saying, we're going to maintain all garbage and waste on board and dispose of it properly at a receptacle when we get back to a shoreline dock. Marine sanitation devices. So if you have on board reception facilities, you gotta go. So all vessels with installed toilet facilities must have an operable Coast Guard certified marine sanitation device or a holding tank. If a Y valve is installed with a holding tank, it must be secured to direct the flow into the holding tank while the vessel operates on U.S. navigable waterways. So that marine sanitation device is obviously just saying that you're keeping all of your wastes on board and it will be discarded when you get back to a shore point. Notice marine casualties. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Coast Guard Form 2692. So any type of what you see there, grounding elisions, loss of main propulsion, primary steering, life, major injury that requires hospitalization beyond your basic first aid, property damage in excess of $75,000, or if you think it is, you have to contact your local Coast Guard unit as soon as possible. You can do that via radio. You can do that via cell phone. If you have the capability of email on board, go ahead and do that. The local Coast Guard investigator will contact you, issue you the 2692 for your completion, at which time you'll fill that out and then you'll present it back to them it's a standard form with check boxes, and then you'll have to give a statement attesting to what exactly happened in your own words. Drug and alcohol testing. So an alcohol test kit for watch persons must be carried on board if more than 2 hours from accessible testing equipment. Most fishing vessels will need to carry a DOT-approved alcohol testing device. This kind of coincides with your marine casualty reporting. So if there's thought that drugs or alcohol are involved, that testing will have to be conducted. So most vessels will be able to complete the drug test if a drug test is necessary at a shoreside at a DOT-approved site. Additional requirements for documented vessels that operate beyond the boundary lines or with or more than 16 individuals on board. You can see all those in Title 46 Code of Federal Regulations 28.200. Again, we don't really think that there's that many that operate there. And again, if you have questions and you are one of those individuals, please reach out to your local Coast Guard representative. So while you're out fishing, I don't know if you've actually encountered an at-sea boarding, but you definitely are within that applicability to receive one. So there's various laws that we can board vessels. So the presence of valid exam decal, From a dock side, may actually reduce the time spent and get you back underway fishing. So if the boarding team sees that you have a valid placard, which we had in the very beginning of the slideshow, and you're within that stipulation of not needing one, that tells the boarding team that you have received a dockside examination and that all of your safety equipment has already been verified by one of the marine inspectors. And then they'll go over the rest of their criteria for questioning the crew, verifying any documentation that they need to document, and get you back underway so that we're not hindering your operations. So our goal with the dockside safety exam is to increase the safety and reduce the at-sea inspection times. And you can request a dockside exam. So it's kind of hard to see, but the map you're looking at right now kind of breaks down the captain of the port zones. It doesn't show the specific individualized units very well. Obviously, the top half throughout Lake Superior, Lake Huron, and Lake Michigan, you have captain of the port zone sector Sault Ste. Marie. Down into Detroit, you've got sector Detroit, and then the lower part of Lake Michigan, I believe their main base of operations is out of the Milwaukee area. And then they have other units or subunits in Chicago and such. So if you go to the next slide, that's pretty much your points of contact throughout all of District 9's AOR. And I believe Dr. Lauren's going to send this out so everybody will have the ability to contact who they need to contact. And if not, you can capture our point of contact information and we'll be glad to get this information out to you. And the last slide is our point of contact information. So if you are in our AOR and you want to request an exam or have any other further questions, you can reach out to myself or MSTC Eric Vogel at the phone number listed or his email. If you just want to come in generic, you can use the ssmprevention@uscg.mil. And at that, Dr. Lauren, I'll take it back to you. If there's any questions that came up while we were going through that, I'll try to answer them best I can.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. Really appreciate it. And there were a few questions. So I think this was a great reminder to go check expiration dates on everybody's vehicles and vessels. Can you tell us if there's an expiration date for immersion suits?
There is not that I know of. Again, most of those, they will last for years and years and years if they're well maintained and kept in good repair. So they usually come in their own, I'm not going to say waterproof, but a weatherproof canvas bag, and it usually comes rolled up. So you unroll it once a year or once every 6 months. I would try to err on the side of caution, and every time you go out, you should be checking your safety equipment to make sure it's in good repair. But I don't think the immersion suits do have an expiration date. I don't want to be quoted on that. That's not something I have off the top of my head. But as long as it's in good repair, we're going to obviously go ahead and pass it. I've seen shipping, like your large ships that have them, and we've seen receipts going back 10 plus years.
Awesome, thank you. And then do you by any chance know how many commercial fishing related casualties there were on the U.S. waters of the Great Lakes in 2019 and 2020?
That I don't know. That's something that we can get back to you. And then if that question wants to be more specifically answered, we can do it. I mean, we operate, so District 9 Coast Guard operates obviously all the Great Lakes. So the main point of contact for that would be Mark Boble on that contact sheet. He is the commercial fishing vessel lead throughout D9. So we would look at our metrics and categorize it throughout our own captain of the port zones versus looking at the entirety of the Great Lakes outside of what we actually control. I don't specifically remember hearing anything, but again, we don't hear the search and rescue aspect. We only look at it for my job roles and responsibility are the inspection fleet and the maritime environmental response activities. And I believe I've only seen 3 commercial fishing vessels that were involved in a maritime environmental aspect, which they sank at the dock. So there wasn't anything that we saw or heard of while underway or out fishing in operations. That's just the captain of the port sector Sault Ste. Marie area. I don't know for the other AORs.
Okay. Do you know a little bit more about why they might have sank at the dock?
Poor maintenance. Older vessels. We do have a very significantly older fishing fleet up here. A lot of wood boats, a lot of degraded fiberglass. Not too many. Again, you get into the larger fishing fleets. like coastwise, they're huge. They're steel. They're 65 plus feet. They're trawlers. They're also built for going offshore for 50 plus miles at times. In the Great Lakes, a lot of the commercial fishing vessels are barely over 26 feet, and they're definitely under 40. So a lot of it's just older vessels where people want to get engaged in the commercial fishing because it's lake fishing. They're not required to have these big, large seagoing vessels. They just can operate with efficiency on a smaller vessel, and they're old. I think that's probably one of the biggest contributions is poor maintenance and the age of the vessel.
Great. Thank you, Russell. Really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to spend with us.
No, thank you for having me.